Good evening, everyone. Happy Monday to you. I'm praying that you're staying nice and warm today. It was in the upper 50s, but today it just felt like my house was kind of cold. And I've been sitting underneath electric heaters because, you don't want to turn up that gas and electric. But been using them heaters, but it just seems like I've just been a little cold today. And then I had to actually go out once or twice, once during lunch and then later on. Um, to pick up my daughter, and it's just cold. It's winter. Well, I mean, what am I going to expect? It's winter. You know, but I do pray that you've had a great day and that you had a wonderful and safe uh, weekend as well, and that maybe you was able to get out to fellowship with others at church or whatever. But I'm happy that you're here with us today or with me tonight. No guest tonight, and I say it every time that it's going to be short, but I start to run my mouth, and things end up being an hour or so. Um, but was not able to secure a guest for tonight anyway. Um, but did want to talk about one or two things quickly as we have now entered into Black History Month. Um, for 2023. And I know there's some who have mixed feelings about it, why we get the shortest month of the year. And, Black history isn't just about a month, it's about a lifetime. And I agree with all of that. I've been seeing the posters and things like that. I agree with that. It's something that should be recognized um, throughout the year, not just one particular month. And too often things we forget about what's going on or the contributions that we've made as African Americans. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But before I get into that, I did want to make sure I encourage everyone, those who are believers in prayer and things like that, pray for those who have perished or who are still dealing with the whole earthquake in Turkey. I'm sure you woke up and heard about that. I think it was like a 7.5, which is a major earthquake. So please keep them in prayer as well as you go through the week. And if you're able to do anything as far as relief is concerned, send something that way. But definitely send them prayers as well. Um, but I'm gonna get right into the Black History Month thing. Even though I had some other notes about the surveillance balloon. I had some thoughts about that. Not going to talk about that. Don't feel like talking about politics. Today's been kind of different for me. It's hard for me to get geared up about what I wanted to talk about, even though there's some headlines out there that we can certainly talk about. Um, one being just silly and stupid to me that if any of you follow sports, Tom Brady retired, and he did it by way of just taking a quick video on his phone, and somebody went out and gathered the sand he was standing on. He was standing on sand and put it in a bottle, and now they're auctioning it off. Um, and the last number I heard, and this was this morning, was like 100. Somebody has bid $160,000 for this mason jar of sand that supposedly he stood on when he retired for the second time. Um, really, I mean, it's like it was just so many different things going on that are just silly, you know, that we could be paying more attention to, you know, or we could be spending more time with as well. Hey, Michelle, thanks for being on. Um, so it's just a lot of silliness out there, and a lot of waste as far as I'm concerned. Um, but the reason why I kind of finally landed on talking about some things about Black history, and I'm no historian, I find every year I learn some new things. I hear and find some new piece of a history I did not know about, and it always makes me reflect back to when I was in school, and I'm mid 50s. I wasn't taught these things in school, you know. Um, I didn't know what I was missing. I didn't understand the richness of the history in the African Americans and the contributions we made to this country. I didn't know all the names. That we should know. Okay, I mean, I knew the big ones. Malcolm X. You know, I knew, of course, Malcolm X and oh my goodness, how am I going? Malcolm X. How am I not saying his name? Just celebrated his birthday. I just went completely blank, y'all. That is crazy. I just went completely blank. It's gonna come to me. But it is always the same two pictures: Malcolm X on one side, and I can't believe I cannot call his name. Martin Luther King. Y'all forgive me. I don't know what happened. I need to take some vitamins or something. My goodness. Um, but I mean, I knew the bigger names, things like that, E.D. Du Bois and things like that. But some of those other obscure names I was not familiar with. Okay. Um, so I think it was Friday, maybe. It was either Friday or Saturday. I think it was Friday, though. It was Friday or Saturday. It was Friday. I know exactly when it was. It was Friday. I watched the 1619 Project, and that's on Hulu. And if you haven't watched it, I suggest you watch it. I think it's a good watch. It's a documentary, you know, but again, it gives you a lot of information. Um, some things, I mean, many other things I was already familiar with, but there's always some little bits and pieces that make you think or you make you realize that that's a piece of history that you might not have understood or that you may not have been exposed to. And I love the way that it started. I will say, and I don't want to discourage you from watching it. I encourage you to watch it. I wasn't crazy about it's a 4-part documentary. I wasn't crazy about the last part um, because it goes into uh, a corporation, and I think they spent a little bit too much time talking about this corporation. It started to feel like it was almost like a vendetta to the corporation, and it kind of just made you feel like, was this what the entire documentary was about? But it's still a lot of good information. They made a lot of great parallels even with that corporation piece, you know, about, slavery and how in some cases when it comes to some companies, um, it's still a form of slavery, and I'm sure for those of you that like sports, like I know Michelle, she likes sports. For those of us that are into sports and like to watch sports, and it talks about the NFL, that documentary doesn't, but I've seen other documentaries and I've seen other programs talk about how the NFL and like the concubine, um, when they're doing, every year they're measuring the performance of others and all the athletes and things like that. It's like being on a slave block. I've seen these type things, and it does make you kind of think about it. But what's most important is, what do these films do for us, and how does it portray us now? And I think it's really important that we do look back and we do look at our history, okay, and we do examine, um, the things that have happened in the past. And I think there's been some great films that do that. Again, just quickly, I'm not going to be on long tonight. I just want to look at or talk about or just bring up some films that I like and some films that you may have liked. And there's some films on this list that I'm gonna have, you know, that I have not seen or that I have not seen in quite some time or watched in their entirety. And this is just a few. This isn't by no means every film that has been out there that's great, but these are the films that I'm familiar with. I've asked a couple other people what films have they liked that were inspirational, or they that really kind of transported you. Oh, there's another one I didn't put on my list. I just thought about it, but that really transported you to um, that time period or a particular time period when this nation was growing on the backs of slaves. You know, the film I just thought about, and maybe I'll look it up real quick. Just stick it in my list real quick. Um, I can't believe I couldn't think about that because it's one of my all-time favorites. But Um, yeah, it's just a shame that we don't see them more often or throughout the year. Now, in a day of today's atmosphere of streaming, you can pretty much see things at any time. But I would really appreciate, almost like think about um like around Easter or Resurrection Sunday, you knew that you was going to see like the Ten Commandments. You knew that you might also see things like Wizard of Oz, things like that. It's like you just knew, around Christmas for whatever reason you would see um the Sound of Music. Those days where there would be some films that you just knew that you could count on seeing at certain times of the year. And I guess this is where I'm at with this. It's like there's some films that you need to make sure that you see, especially during this time of year, even though they all may not be available to you. And I just wanted to share this list with you to encourage you to spend some time with some of these films. Spend some time with some of these films, give some reviews, do it together as a family. I love doing things with my family. I love watching things with my family. We like to watch movies. We probably need to watch these kind of movies a lot more. But I really encourage you to watch these films over this month. And again, if I don't hit some, I would love to hear as I'm going through. Maybe tell me what it is that you like about the film. Tell me what it is that you didn't like about the film. To give me a film that's not on my list, okay, that you think is worth watching. Because, like I said, there's lots of films out there, and I just picked out the ones that came to mind that I can remember. Some that I saw on the list. Um, but let's just spend some time thinking about that. And they can be both uplifting. They can be aggravating. You know. Um, but it's important that we remember this experience because and we share it with the next generation, because I really feel like sometimes they are out of touch. Like I said, I'm in my mid 50s. I feel like I've always felt like I came at the time of when things were starting, where things weren't so outwardly racist, where I came in at a time where the signs of colored, okay, or colored only, or you had the colored bathrooms or the colored uh, water fountains, separation, all that. When I was born, all that stuff is starting to go away. You know what I mean? So I didn't have to live through those things. So I wasn't in touch with that experience. Like my just my older siblings, really. My brother and my sister, they experienced it more than I had to experience it. That's not to say I didn't experience racism, but I didn't have to experience it in the sense that they had to experience it. And certainly I didn't have to deal with it like my parents had to deal with it, my aunts and my uncles. They had to live through that kind of stuff. And I mean, going back the next generation, grandparents, great uncles, great aunts, things like that, they'd had to live these things, and they lived in these times that many of these movies were written. So I really encourage us to make sure that we share these movies, share the history that we do know, and then gain more history so that we can have an even better understanding. Because sometimes I'm fearful that. If we don't know, or if the next generation doesn't know the history, even though they seem to be a lot stronger now, they seem to be more woke, if you will. They seem to be a little more attentive, okay, and a little less tolerant, for lack of a better word, and that they're more vocal. One of the things that really um, lifted my heart was seeing all the protests and going to the college campuses after the George Floyd incident. How active they were and things like that. Um, I just don't want us to become complacent, and I think that's one of the reasons why the recent years, the past 8 to 10 years, um, has been really so painful for us as a nation, because once President Obama was elected, I think many of us felt like, hey, we've turned the corner. We've made um, the proper step. You know, um, I don't think we thought that everything was behind us, but I think we became shocked to realize how much further we still have to go. And after he left, I think we were even more shocked to see just how much hatred is still out there and how much racism still plays a part in what we do in our everyday lives, and how emboldened some people are about it as well. And I think if we don't pay attention, and if we don't stand up for critical race theory. And I know there's many who don't like that term, who feel like it shouldn't be taught. You know, I think that, again, just to quote other great minds and other great speakers, you know, those of you who do not know history are doomed to repeat it. And if we try to act like it didn't happen, and I don't think it should be taught to make someone feel bad, but it has to be a part of the truth. And when you start to hide truth, you're being deceptive. You're being deceptive. You can't rewrite history. Just be truthful about it so that we can't make the same mistakes. I don't look at people and because of their color. Thankfully I was raised to truly um act like Martin Luther King, and believe that I should judge people by their character, not by the color of their skin. So I don't believe I'm racist. I don't believe that uh, I hold someone who's living now responsible for what happened 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 70 years ago. I don't know. I don't do that. That was those people then. And everybody has the opportunity to do better and be better now. And that's just how I look at it. I don't impute their sin on them. Just like I wouldn't want anybody to impute someone else's sin on me. I mean, it was wrong. It was an injustice. Let's make it right. But the critical race theory, I keep hearing, well, we don't want critical race theory because it's going to make our children feel bad. you know that's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is, hey, this is what happened, and this is what we need to make sure it doesn't happen again, and we got to do everything we can to avoid it. And this is what we that some believed, but this is what we now know. And that's why it's important that we know about the history and what we've done. It's important that others know our history and what we've done. The importance of who we are and who we were to this country and how we helped build it. You know, so that may sound like I was on a soapbox, and maybe I was, but just my thoughts where that's concerned. So again, I would love to hear your comments. Put in your favorite movie, see if it pops up on my list. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like, and then, just kind of share this list. Think about, hey, have I seen that? Maybe I want to check this out. I know there's one or two on my list that came up um, that I know I'm probably going to end up watching this week. I'm going to try to do like one or two movies a week. Okay. Um, I might try to find one or two more documentaries to watch as well. But again, this all started for me with um, the 1619 project, and I think that was something that was produced by Oprah. You know, Lord knows I don't always agree with what Oprah says, but she does put out some pretty good projects, and she does back some pretty good things, and she does get some positive messages out there. I know the 1619 project, when it first came out last year, especially with it got so much, I wouldn't say notoriety, but it raised so many questions that many was like it was just propaganda. I know I saw that President Trump, he was saying it was just propaganda, and there were so many against it, that it started to get a lot of backlash and things like that. But I encourage you, again, 1619 Project on Hulu. Check it out. It's basically 4 hours, like an hour an episode, maybe a little bit longer than that. Um, but it's really good. And again, just from my critical eye, the only thing I didn't really like about it was the very last. episode because I felt like they started hitting on this one particular corporation too much, and not so much that um, I like the corporation so much, um, but because it kind of just felt like a vendetta, like I said, and it kind of took away from me what the main message of the documentary was about. Although I understand the initial correlation that they were making with it, I just felt like they spent too much time on that one piece. But check it out for yourself. Check it out for yourself, and you watch it. Uh, Come back and make a comment. Let us know what you think. All right. So one more time, please give me comments as I'm going through. I'm gonna give comments about each of these films as I can, because like I said, some of them I haven't seen, some of them I have seen, and then once I'm done with that, we're gonna go on out of here, and I'm gonna go find something to watch tonight. You know, I think I know one or two things I'm gonna watch tonight before I go lay my body down. All right. Um, so the first one, and I don't know how many of you have seen it, but this is like one of my favorite films that I ever watch. And anytime I do see it on TV, I cannot pass it by. Okay. I don't see it on much, but I did just recently see it on maybe about 2 weeks ago. I think I was home on a Saturday and it was actually on, and it's called 12 Angry Men, released in 1957. Now, again, my list isn't just about, African Americans, but it's about race. Okay. And I remember the first time I saw 12 Angry Men, um, I didn't see the very beginning. In the very beginning, you see um, what this argument that takes place again amongst these 12 men, a jury, okay? You see who they are arguing about, okay? Um, and I'm trying, it's like I want to say, but I don't want to say, because the whole time I'm watching it is like I know who they're talking about. I know who they're talking about. Okay. Um, and that's because of my own experience. Okay. Um, if you want to skip the first 2 or 3 minutes of the film, you probably would feel the same way. All right. But I love the dynamics of it. I love the look of it. It's a black and white film. Sorry for you younger folks, but it's a black and white film. I know that some schools, like art schools, things like that, they'll show this. It may be a requisite for them to watch it, but by far one of my all-time favorite movies. Just because I love the dynamics, the writing, and it faces racism head on, you know um and it's just written well. Okay, so that's my first one. All right. um Another, and I'm sure some of you have heard of, A Raisin in the Sun. I remember watching this at least once, maybe twice, but it's been many years since I've seen it. And this is when I asked my mother, what was one of her favorite movies, and this is the first one that came to mind. She said there's others, but this is the first one that came to mind. This is back in 1961, a Sidney Poitier uh, film. Um, Again, it's been many years since I've seen it, but I remember watching it. A really great film. If you have not seen it, you want to make sure you see it. I see some likes going on, and yeah, maybe you can just give me some likes um, if you like it. I wish sometimes I do wish there was a thumbs down, but give me some likes, or give me a heart if you love it. Okay, but this is something I'm thinking about maybe going back, maybe trying to find this month, just because I know I haven't seen it in quite some time. All right. Um, Another one of my favorite movies um, was Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, 1967. 1967. So this was actually a year after I was born. So of course I saw it later on in life. But again, interracial matters. Interracial couples. Uh, and one time I was actually thinking about doing a show around this particular movie, because one of the subject matters that comes up is, uh, or one of the lines that Sydney states. This is another Sidney Poitier movie. One of the things he states is, um, when he's talking to his father. You know, they're getting into it a little bit. And his attitude is, to paraphrase because I haven't seen it in a little bit, is that, well, the father felt like, I made all these sacrifices for you. I've done this, I've done that. And Sydney's like, I don't owe you anything. You owe me. You brought me into this world. You supposed to have done that. I didn't ask to come, you know. And that line or that mindset I always kind of found to be interesting. And I sometimes I wonder, um, is that how the generation feels now? Because I know oftentimes we feel that they feel entitled, and certainly that's the way it comes across sometimes. Um, and I sometimes wonder, where does that entitlement come from? Um, I know I was raised to be respectful and to be thankful for everything that my parents and those that came before me, and not to take advantage of or to take for granted the things that they do because they didn't have to do it, you know. Um, but yet at the same time, I understand the other flip side of, well, if you brought me here, you're supposed to do these things. You're supposed to talk to me, and you're supposed to take care of me. And so is it goes beyond just that interracial concept of a black man um, wanting to marry a white woman, and and this is what these kind of movies should do. It should raise different kind of questions and make you think. Because even as I was coming back home, or maybe as I was going out to get my daughter, I was thinking, how do we look at that as African Americans? Um, how do we look at a black man marrying a white woman, or a white woman marrying a black man? You know, there's always the joke about how the sisters don't like how the brothers will go after the white women and things like that. But what kind of things does that spark when you look at history? You know, I was thinking about that. Is it more taboo one way or the other? Is it more taboo when we see a white man with a sister, and then we think about slavery and how they would rape our women? And is this just a way for them to fulfill that? I just wonder how much of that stuff do we still carry, if we still carry it at all. But those are the type of thoughts, that these kind of movies would inspire during that time when things were still hot, when things were still muddy, if you will, when things were still a challenge. These were the movies that were out at that time that made you question. And it's not like it was new. Black women and white women, um, or black women and white men, and white women and black men. And I don't know if I just said the same thing twice, but those things have been happening. Those things have been happening. But I just wonder, where are we at with that today? Where are we at with that kind of stuff today, 60, 70 years later? you know and how's that how do we feel? um I think we're more accepting of it, especially the younger generations, because again, they don't see those ties and necessarily feel those ties that some of us older generations may have. um and I guess you know again, I just those are the kind of movies I like, and those kind of movies that just kind of make you think and examine where you are in your own mind, in your own heart. Okay. The next movie, and again, I'm not going to spend that much time on every movie, but that's one. The Color Purple. So, with some of y'all, I'm going to lose a black card because, in all honesty, I have never watched The Color Purple all the way through. Never. So I know that, yeah, I lost some points with some of you. Um, but and in all honesty, I've heard so many quotes. I've seen the major cuts, or the major scenes. I've heard them all so many times. It's like, what's the point at the now? Maybe one day when I have absolutely nothing else to do and I catch it from the very beginning, maybe I'll watch it. But I've never seen The Color Purple all the way through, and it's not that important for me to do so. But I know that's a fan favorite or one of the fan favorites. Okay. Do the Right Thing. Do the Right Thing, 1989, a Spike Lee film. Um, Great film. Again, talks about the economics more so than anything else, the economics, but the racism. And it's funny, it seemed like I watched this again or watched most of it a few months back, maybe sometime last year. Um, it still holds up. And it's as long as we still have brutality, you know, police brutality, as long as we have that racism, even that hidden racism, those hidden biases, I think this movie could hold up for a long time, unfortunately. You know, it's a great film, looks at the inner city, it looks at those hidden biases, it looks at how people are coexisting, but they still have these biases, they still have these stereotypes, right? It's a great film. If you've never seen it, I encourage you to do it. And this is one that you may want to watch this month as well. Another, and I'm just doing this by year in no particular order. This isn't like a countdown or anything like this, but these are the ones I could think about. These are the ones. Again, I might have saw on some lists. Okay, and I just put them in here about order of uh, release date or release year. But another Spike Lee film, Malcolm X, excellent film, uh, based on the autobiography of Malcolm X. One of my favorites. Haven't watched it in a couple of years, but outstanding. Denzel, of course, was outstanding in it. Um, just the whole story about Malcolm X, understanding him. You know, I'm a Christian. He's a Muslim, but or was a Muslim, but I still have a great deal of regard for him. I have a great deal of what he did for our community. You know, and again, it's not, you know, just because I don't always agree with everything that someone does or says. Okay, does not mean that I now need to throw them away. You know, I understand watching that film, I understand his position better, I understand um, where he came from, what drove him, his theology, if you will, all those things, you know. And thankfully his is one of the stories, even though he never converted to Christianity or anything like that, but his is the story of one who near the end realizes, if you're going to be about God and if you're going to be about your true theology, God doesn't teach racism, because he started to see that um, being a Muslim wasn't about being black; it was about being a Muslim, and that he saw Muslims of all colors. And I think that that was a major, major influence in the later path or the latter parts of his life. So if you've never seen Malcolm X, um, you definitely want to watch that one. Somewhat long, but great. Okay. The next, The Secret Life of Bees, released in 2008. Uh, I can't say for sure if I watched this one all the way through. I know I remember sitting down to watch it, but I don't remember if I've seen it all the way through, to be honest. Um, but there's part of me saying it was a good movie, you know. But if you ask me to point out different scenes or different things about the movie, I would not be able to tell you that. But again, another fan favorite. Um, I'm pretty sure I watched this movie. I just can't remember everything about it, at least not at the moment. And it's probably one of those things that I'll probably end up watching um, this month just to refresh my memory, because it's been quite some time. If when I did watch it, it was probably close to the release time, and it's just time for me to watch it again. Really, the next movie, one of my favorites, Amistad. This is the movie that I thought about that I didn't have on the list that I stuck into the list real quick. La Amistad. Uh, Again, another Oprah Winfrey and what's his name? Steven Seagal. Nope, Steven Seagal. That's the wrong one. Um, what's his name? I can't think of his name. The director, Steven. It'll come to me. But um, my mind just not there today. Um, but um, The guy that wrote Jaws. Y'all know who I'm talking about. Anyway, great movie, great acting. One of those movies that may irritate you a little bit, when you start to see some of the injustice and some of the scenes. Um, but again, based on true story. I love I love the writing. In all honesty, one of my favorite scenes in any movie at any time. This is again one of those movies that if it's on, especially during this scene, I can't pass it. Or if I know it's coming up, I can't pass it by. And that's when President Adams, Quincy Adams, is arguing before the Supreme Court, and his argument before the court is just magnificent. The acting, all of that is just magnificent, and I just love watching that. But another great story, another part of history that many of us didn't know about that you probably want to get familiar with. Another one, Selma, 2014. 2014. Great movie. Haven't watched this one in a number of years. Again, Malcolm X, the incident happened in Selma. And again, these are the kind of movies I'm just kind of picking that kind of transport you back to that time to make you kind of they have that ability to make you kind of feel the tension. You know what I mean? That's going on back there during that time. So Selma certainly is one of those movies as well. One of my favorites that's always on. So I can't complain about never seeing this one, but this one's always on. Hidden Figures 2016. I like this one just because, again, I was born mid 60s. This is like at the height of the space race, you know. And until this movie came out, I had no idea how involved Black people, let alone Black women, how involved they were in the success of the space program. You know, um, until 2016, had no idea. And we're talking about what, 2016? We're talking 50 years later. Okay. So um, a good movie if you had not seen that. Good acting as well, great script as well. But again, put you back in that time that's a little closer to where we are now. But when you think about what was still going on, and these women still being able to persevere uh, through some serious stuff, that were still by those who would want to hold them back. Um, it's a good film. It's a good film. I like watching it. It's always on. I think my wife thinks I like it because it's got pretty ladies in there or pretty actresses in there. They all right, but I just love that whole space aspect because I'm a geek. I'm a nerd anyway. I'm a space nerd. So you definitely want to check that one out. Um, Marshall, 2017, probably my favorite Chadwick Boseman film. I mean, other than Black Panther, and Black Panther isn't on the list just because, even though it was like one of the highest grossing films ever, especially when it came to Black cinema. But Marshall, I love this film. Anytime I see this on, I can't pass it by. I think he does a masterful job in Marshall. And again, kind of transports you back to the time. Again, talks about that interracial aspect, okay, um, that was going on back then. And again, it's able to uh, kind of show you that tension that was happening back then. But the things that made Marshall great, right? And you can see how he ended up being a Supreme Court justice. All right. Um, One of the newer ones I'm talking about, well, I missed one. I skipped one. Wait a minute. Let me move this one up. Another one, and this is one. This was actually 2013. 12 years a slave. This is one of the ones that will anger you, that will get on your nerves. 12 years a slave. Um, a free man ends up being um, indoctrinated into slavery. Wrong place, wrong time, right? uh, you'll definitely catch attitude with this one. You'll catch attitude. Uh, but again, just let you. And I honestly, I don't remember if this was based on a true story or not. I think it was based on a true story. But these are the type of things that could happen. These are the type of things that could happen to people as we, um, although we're told we were free and that we were um, been given um, papers and things like that, we still could have been thrown back into slavery, just like that. Take our rights taken away from us just like that. Hey, Barbara, hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining tonight. All right. So if you haven't seen that, um, definitely got to have the right mindset because that one will give you a little bit of an attitude. Okay. I'm just to give you, at least it gave me attitude. All right. One of the newer uh, ones that came out within the past few years is One Night in Miami, and I really enjoyed this particular film. This is about a conversation. Of course, it's theatrical because nobody knows about the conversation. And evidently, this conversation really did take place. Um, but One Night in Miami, was it Regina King did this one, and it's a conversation between Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, um, who else? Jim Brown, and the singer. Um, what's his name? It'll come to me in a moment. But all good, all good actors. I'm bad with names tonight, y'all. Y'all need to pray for my head, pray for my brain. Um, all great actors. Um, Great story. Of course, we don't know if this is how the conversation went between these people. All right. Um, but nicely shot, nicely written. Okay. Barbara Fagan, she's saying, yeah, it was good. Um, I haven't watched it in the past couple years. It just came out like in 2020, but I think I will probably. This will probably be one of the ones I will. Actually, I just asked my wife and daughter the other night if they wanted to watch it, and they weren't in the mood to watch it. I guess so. We didn't watch it, but I'll probably be watching it probably for the next couple of weeks or a couple of days, um, just because it's a good film. And then where I'm at. Harriet. This came out in 2019. I have not seen this one. It's on my DVR. It's saved. So I know this is going to be probably one I watched this week because I saw it was coming on a couple weeks ago, and I ended up recording it. But this one came out in 2019. Let me know if y'all seen it. Let me know if you think it's good. What you think about it. But I am looking forward to this one. I missed it when it came out. I'm not sure how I missed it. But I definitely think I'll be watching it by the weekend, if not a little bit sooner. So I can't give you much about that. I mean, we know the story of Harriet Tubman, um, the Underground Railroad, and things like that. And I will say, if you haven't done this, try to hit some of those stops on the Underground Railroad. Um, I think my wife and I we've kind of committed ourselves to trying to make sure we find more spots or stops on the Underground Railroad. The first one that we ran into is the actual last one on the East Coast before it gets to um, Canada. Okay, and that's in Niagara Falls because we went to Niagara Falls a couple of summers ago, and just had to see that Harriet Tubman museum there and found out that that was the last stop on the East Coast, okay, of the Underground Railroad before they entered into or escaped into Canada. Um, and then later on, I think it was just last summer, we were in Western Maryland, and I'm trying to think of the name of the city, but I'm not sure of the name of the city. Might have been Cumberland, Maryland. Um, or Flintstone, Maryland, someplace in that area. But um, there's a stop there at an old church, and you can go down into the tunnels and see where they entered in, and they kind of explain to you how they could sneak in because it looks very different now. Um, but to see the passageways and where they may have lived for a time under the church and things like that is really amazing. So it's something that I definitely want to continue to do is go see these different areas that's on the Underground Railroad. If you all know more about that, love to hear about that as well. Uh, but maybe that's something that I can try to do this month. Try to find another place, even though it's cold. Um, See if I can find another place this month that we can go visit because it's all up and down the East Coast, and most of them are drivable as well. So I think maybe that's what I'll do. Maybe that's something I can do with the wifey this weekend. Okay. Um, and then finally, here's another one I have not seen, but I saw it pop up on a lot of um, lists. All right. And it's Judas and the Black Messiah. Um, and please don't confuse this with a biblical story. Just me looking at the, I wouldn't say the trailer because I remember seeing the trailer, but the description of the movie. This isn't a biblical story. This is about Black Panthers and the betrayal that took place in Black Panthers. And I mean, that's just another part of our history more recently, in the 60s and even into the 70s. But this is something I plan on watching as well. If you've watched that, give us some input about that and let us know what you think about it. All right. So those are my picks this year that I would encourage you to watch. This is my first movie critic review for Keep It Real Conversations. If you check them out for the first time, let me know. Just come back to this and put it in the comments. Let me know what you think. If you have other movies that you feel are must see, and again, by no means is this an exhaustive list. There are tons, especially those. I mean, a lot of these are like recent within the last 20 years, you know. But back in there's certainly more in the 60s and the 50s and things like that that I didn't mention that are worth going back to look at. Um, there's other movies like The Butler. I never saw The Butler. I know I'm losing Black Card, but there's some movies I just never seen. You know, that I want to see there, but there's others that I know that you just must see, and most of them are on this list. And I do hope that you take some time this month and do it as a family. Sit down with the next generation or two, and watch it, and then have conversation, you know. And if you are one of my white friends out there, don't be afraid of them and to have that conversation. And again, it's not to make you feel bad. It's just a fact. It's truth. And all truth has to be revealed. All right. And when we reveal the truth, when we face the truth, we're less likely to make the same mistake once we understand the truth of the things. You know, and I pray that we can continue to grow. I pray that we will continue to get better as a nation. Right now, our nation's at a bad place um, where things like this don't even want to be talked about or shared. But I do pray that maybe in the next 25, 30 years, we'll be even further along. You know what I mean? And um, it's something I think about and talk about when I do cultural competency classes and things like that. And I listen to the younger generations, and I can tell um, they're not quite as in touch, but I can tell at the same time they're not as tolerant or don't seem to be as tolerant to say this is okay or that was okay, and that this is going to be allowed to happen. You know. Um, so, with all of that being said, I do pray I didn't bore you too much. You can always go back and look at the list. Just kind of click through it, if you will. As always, I ask that you share our conversations, that you spread the word about the conversations. Listen, in April, it'll be 3 years. When I first started doing this and I prayed about it, it was clear to me that this would be a 2 to 3 year project to see how things went and then an evaluation. at that point. Um, and honestly, y'all, like today, it was hard for me to get generated just because I didn't have a guest or a guest fell through. And that disappoints me a great deal because I like to have a conversation. Conversation should be between at least two people, not just one way where it's just talking. And that's again why I make pleas um, for a co-host. You know, if anybody is interested in just being a co-host for a little while, it doesn't have to be a permanent thing, but doesn't not mind giving up a couple Mondays, you know, where we can bounce thoughts and ideas off of one another. I don't care, male, female, as long as you're able to carry on a conversation. You know, I don't care. I definitely don't care about race. You know, I don't even care if you are necessarily deeply religious or spiritual, you know, because those are the things we can talk about. We can talk about those differences, you know, and that's how we get better understanding, which is basically what a conversation is there for us to understand one another better. So I'm not looking for someone that necessarily agrees with me or someone that um, has the same views of it as I do. Um, that's nice, you know, but I just want to have good conversation, you know, and ultimately that's what will propel this particular program and help this community. And really, that's one of the things I want to do. I wanted to have a community that I can help others and address questions that they may not feel comfortable asking around some of their friends, whether they're spiritual or whatever, you know, that we can examine. And yes, I mean, honestly, to be fair, yeah, I'm always going to turn to the Bible. That's always going to be my go-to. That's my final authority. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Give your point of view. I'll give my point of view, and we move on from there. We may end up agreeing. We may not agree, but I'll still love you and respect you, and you do the same for me, prayerfully. Prayerfully. All right. So again, I thank you all again for your time. Share the conversation, and I look forward to seeing you next Monday at 7 o'clock. And be blessed, and know that I love you. But as always, God loves you better and best, and He proved it by giving us His Son. Talk to you again real soon.